Good afternoon, dear guests and those who watch us online. We continue panel discussions in UCMC project Anti-Debates. Today we are speaking about three key topics. Democratic Initiative Foundation survey revealed that these issues are the most pressing. And the first is how to attain peace in Donbass. The second is economic growth, and the third is corruption. So what can the president do in order to improve economy? And also we will focus what Ukraine can do in the sphere of economy in the nearest future, what the president can or cannot do for the improvement in the sector. Our guests are Dmytro Yablonovskyi, Deputy Director of the Center of Economic Strategy, Ihor Burakovskyi, Head of the Board of the Institute for Economic Research and Political Consultations, Professor of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, and Oleg Nivievskyi, Professor of the Kyiv School of Economics. Let's start our discussion. Maybe we will be joined by Volodymyr Dubrovskyi, but we do not know whether he will be able to come. So we will start with the questions Ukraine faced this year. In the framework of its international obligations, we should make payments concerning foreign debt. We should complete our obligations concerning the association agreement and IMF. So what are the key tasks for this year? I would like to give the floor to Dmitry first. I believe that the most pressing are debts that should be paid. And we should cooperate with IMF closely for this. Both candidates said that they will continue this cooperation, and this is positive. And what will be the price, and maybe my colleagues will add, but maybe this is the key element. And IMF maybe will reduce the appetites of the future president to increase expenditures before parliamentary elections. We will end these elections and we will start the next one, and maybe the consumption will be increased. They will provide more pensions, more payments, but this debt will reduce this wish to spend money. If we are speaking about our obligations, and we will speak about the increase of our economy further. Ihor Valentinovich, what is your position concerning this issue? You know, it is difficult to speak about the policy of the next president, but it is not so difficult. We understand that people are interested in economic problems, and these should be the views of the candidates for presidency about their views what should be done in the economic sector. Going back to your question, 3 blocks of questions. So the government and the parliament and the president started to resolve these issues, and these achievements should be protected and continued. We should understand that we should speak about ProZorro system and its development, and state procurement system and its development, and there were scandals in the defense sector, and without these types of systems we will have such misunderstandings in the future. If we are speaking about continuation of reform, this is pension reform and healthcare sector reform. These are unpleasant reforms because they touch everyone and they change our attitudes, how we got these benefits before, and we should deal with these issues. And the reform of administering and governance both at the central and local levels. If we are speaking about strategic issues, if we are speaking about the risks we face today, as my colleague said it correctly, this is the foreign debt 2019-20 20. We should be diplomatic, and some politicians say that we should restructure this debt. Some experts say about control default. First, I would like to say that this control default, it is like whether you can be half pregnant or not. Controlled or not, default is the inability to complete obligations. That's why we should cooperate with International Monetary Fund. When we are speaking about cooperation, we should revise many of our programs that we implement together with USAID and European Union in order to understand why we fail to implement them or cannot use all the funds that are allocated to Ukraine. So this is not only about the money that was allocated. Some people mentioned that Greece got more, but this is about the use of money and about corruption, whether something was stolen or not. But the matter is whether we can use this money efficiently with maximum benefit. There are several issues we should discuss in the strategic plan. We were speaking about some breakthroughs, but we should understand that as of today, we should carry out structural reforms. If we look at the gross domestic product, so the main here 3 areas. Processing industry, it provides 13%, agriculture, 10% of GDP, and retail and wholesale trade provides 13%. So these are 3 key areas. If we are speaking about information, telecommunication, these are modern sectors, so 3.8% they provide. So the issues remain open. I want to say that, yes, there should be policies in each sector. This is a complex topic, and our institute will carry out special discussions. This will be called Industry 4.0. We will discuss these issues during this discussion meeting. And also we will have a reform. We do not speak about it a lot, and it will be really difficult. This is the reform of the labor law, because organization of production changed a lot, and demand changed, and the scheme how to attract people to labor, and there is international competition for labor, and migration of workforce exists, and this is and this labor law that exists now, it prevents business from development, and it regulates some things that do not really exist, and it provides some impediments for businessmen. So now question to Oleg, what are the key tasks for Ukraine this year? Thank you. I would specify 2 or 3 things. First, in my opinion, this is an important thing. This is implementation of obligations about free trade zone with the EU. This is not the. So there is an institutional part of approximation of Ukrainian legislation to EU legislation, and this part is more important if you are speaking about long-term goals of Ukraine for growth. And Ukraine adopted the strategy of implementation of the agreement in some parts. So, for example, sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, and the implementation of the agreement is really slow. If we take sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, so this is 75%. Phytosanitary means maybe 30%. The main law is not adopted on this concerning harmonization, and it is difficult to say about significant improvement. Last year, we had information that the Ministry of Infrastructure has catastrophic situation, 30% of implementation. These are lost opportunities. I'm not speaking about I would like to speak about economic development. We should harmonize our legislation in the sphere of safety of food products. We had to make titanic work to adopt a law to agree with everyone, and it provided us with opportunity to have the standards for food products like in the EU, and it provided us the opportunity to provide products not only to EU but to China and to other countries. So this is a carte blanche for export to other countries. So this is in order to understand the importance of this thing. So this is approximation, harmonization with the European legislation. This is a big challenge for Ukrainian power. And Igor Anatolyevich said about the use of resources that are provided by donors. They provided as help for Ukraine and also to the government. And I believe that the main challenge for Ukraine, yes, IMF, trade agreement are important, but also the issue of human capital is the main issue. I see that we lack qualified personnel. And who will implement the agreement? Who will implement the agreement from the side of Ukraine? And when we lack qualified people, it is impossible to make progress faster. So I would like to say that land reform is really important, and the president may influence on this, because the president and Oblast administration and the regional administration, this is his vertical of power, he may influence, and the formation of opinion and the formation of environment that is important for this discussion. And the president, for example, Petro Poroshenko, he clearly stated that he wants to introduce the land market, and also and Zelensky also supports this idea. So a lot will depend on the promotion of this reform. Would you like something to add? I would like to narrow the focus. So experts understand that president has limited influence on economy because this is the cabinet of ministers' responsibility and the responsibility of the other ministries. But many people want to hear about economy. And I would like to ask you, what is the simple answer to this question? What can the president do for economy, or what he cannot do? And Igor said about it, president does not have many responsibilities in this, so he may influence on the personnel, on some institutions, on the state property fund and other institutions. But traditionally, with each president, they renew everything, and this is a bad practice. It is good practice if there is a term, for example, for the head of the anti-monopoly committee, he should implement his functions during his term. If there are questions to him, once again, there are also explanations why everything should be changed, but I would like to stress that this is a bad approach. When there are many changes, for example, to replace the head of the National Bank, and there should be proper resolution of the issues concerning nomination to the positions. And I believe that people, maybe they are interested in economy and promises, but they cannot read the programs properly. Both candidates, they want to open land market, but I doubt that many voters know about it. We carried out a survey due to firm, and some people get information from the series, from fiction. Many people, they believe that these candidates may regulate prices, and if they wish to do this, they may increase salaries and pensions and to decrease pension age. But this is populism. There are no such things in their programs. And if we assume that they will promote their programs, we should be realistic. I would advise to all Ukrainians to read these programs because they are more liberal than directed to increase the role of the state. But if we look at the opinions of the voters, their views are more paternalistic, but this is about political economic populism, and this is a separate topic. But I believe that for economic growth, last year we had 3.3%. This year it decreases, for example, 2.7. In order to we should stimulate investment, not consumption. We carried out a survey together with Dragon Capital. We carried out survey. People need fighting corruption and improvement of environment concerning investment. So the candidates should say that we are now at the 120th place concerning corruption. This information was provided by Transparency International. And concerning and the candidates should provide their opinion how they plan to decrease corruption. State prevails in many areas, and they assess the state concerning the GDP, and we should also speak about state enterprises. We have more than 3,000 of them, and the Anti-Monopoly Committee provided an assessment that we have 15,000 communal enterprises. From one side, we have decentralization, and from the other, due to decentralization, we increased the influence of communal enterprises locally. And also Anti-Monopoly Commission stated that 9% of GDP is state help, and this is really a lot. In my opinion, state support, it distorts competition often, and this is the source of corruption, and this is also significant. And the same with land reform, the absence of land market, but the state owns about 10 million hectares of agricultural land, and this prevents development. From one side, this is a source of corruption, and from the other side, this is lack of investment. And going back to the issue, this is not the main priority of the president, but if we want to speak about his plans, I would like to know his opinion how he will stimulate investment instead of stimulating consumption, and how he will fight corruption, and how he what he will do with the judiciary and courts, and what opportunities will be provided for the development of private sector, and leveling the field and stimulating the competition. I have a question. The next question is about responsibility of the cabinet of ministers and the parliament, about the association agreement, and we have some delays in this area. About the implementation of those norms, maybe there will be some losses for our business, because the business should use these opportunities, and what will be the consequences, because European partners, they see that there is no proper implementation of the association agreement, and they start to have some requirements to us, and it is really important to implement our obligations concerning association agreement timely. So you have a really big existential question. First, there is a Latin principle, pactus servandum. So the obligation should be implemented, and this is our property here in Ukraine. So we promise and then we say that we won't implement something, some component. And about the content, we should clearly understand that without international cooperation and without international support, Ukraine won't be able to implement all those big and small plans that we have today. So this is the most important thing, and no matter what they say about our opportunities in the global world, this won't work. We shouldn't forget about the war that is ongoing, and we do not know what forms it will have in the future. And we need political support from international community, and this support and economic support can be provided due to success stories. We should show that we really work. We should show what we do, and there are political cycles, and in the West as well, and they may get tired. If we look on the map of the world, on the political map, the 90s, 20s, the European elections in many countries of the European Union and the elections in US, they also start the electoral campaign there. So we understand that in this we should show that we are present on the map, because these big players, they have their own interests, and if we think about Ukraine as a center, for them this is not the case. We really want it, but this is not the case. So we should do our thing. And we have many international obligations, and money also connected to these obligations. In the European Union, so they use the principle towards Ukraine. It is called more for more. So if we do more, they will provide more for us, including financial help. And we may speak about separate programs, but we should pay attention to the fact that in many aspects of our reform, we carry out our reforms due to foreign money. If we lack this money, there will be burden on the Ukrainian budget, and we also burden on our technological opportunities. So we should attract international experience, and in the sense, I believe that if we really want to join NATO and the European Union, and if we do not implement our obligations in this light version, so association agreement is not even a start about the talk about membership. So in this we won't be able even to speak about the membership. So maybe it is not really interesting for the media and the citizens, but we transferred to the stage of the reform where we should make clear, concrete, small and invisible steps. And I always speak about it, and I would like to speak about once again, and the president and the government, they should become leaders of these changes. It is difficult to find the sector where you can just come with an axe and just to hack everything and everything will be good. So I would like to say that we have a problem of political leadership. So many reforms, they are not popular, and also we should say that when we create some new conditions, some new pension or healthcare conditions, new institutions, we should always explain to society that for this good life, people should pay, because this state is not created by itself. And this is a difficult change of opinion, because this contradicts our recent history. Thank you.
If you want to add, you are welcome. I would like to add, you asked what implications could be for Ukraine. The answer is very simple. We just postponed the period of Ukrainian growing dynamics, positive dynamics. The Europeans do not suffer from this, Ukrainians suffer. I have already told about the opening of markets. This is about harmonization of legislation. the reforms here are implemented only under the influence of external forces. Without this external force, external pressure, no dynamics in Ukraine is observed, so we make harm to ourselves. It is very good when we have goal. The European integration has goal, and this society is consolidated in this aspect and makes everyone going forward. If something should be adopted, you hesitate whether you need it, where to take political will, where to take votes from. In the past, the politicians said that they even bought votes from some MPs for adoption of Euro integration laws. It shows that it is bad, but when there is a strategic goal, there are ways to achieve it. If we stop, we will just stay in place and there will be no development of the country. The European integration is a good goal which allows to consolidate the society, the politicians, and to take to adopt laws which are even unpopular among voters. When we do only what our ordinary voters want, then we will do the things which do not work, such as halving the gas prices. Theoretically, some majority is possible to be gathered, but this would have catastrophic impact on the economy. If we cooperate with the IMF, then we will have a long-term growth perspective. The other question which is usually asked in the discussion, that more and more Ukrainians outflow from Ukraine. We have a brain drain. The youth goes abroad. What should be done in Ukraine to create jobs? Two key things for Ukrainian government, what they can do so that Ukrainians see it more beneficial to stay in Ukraine than to go abroad. We prepared a special analytical note. This outflow, it is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. Different types of people outflow from Ukraine. The salaries growth, this would be the first contribution, and productivity of work, the efficiency and performance, they should be improved. To this end, investments are needed. What is needed for investors so that they build new plants, new facilities? They should know that nobody will take their facilities. So we are back again to the issue of corruption and fair judicial system. So there is no simple recipe. The only thing is improvement of work performance. And some, for example, IT sector staff, they go out from Ukraine because they like European lifestyle. They see they are more protected there. They see more development, career development opportunities in Europe. If in Ukraine it is possible to start a small enterprise like individual entrepreneurs, when they see it is beneficial for them, IT personnel, they stay in Ukraine. when they see it is more beneficial for them to develop their own enterprises in Ukraine. I would like to add, I agree with Dmytro completely that always in any political cycle we try to find some magic instrument so that everything starts working. The problems we are discussing today, they are problems not inherent only to Ukraine, but to other countries as well. Many other countries faces the same challenges. You can remind the Trump's words, let's create jobs inside the countries and not let the capital flow out of the country. I would like to support Dmytro and say that reform for me is reassessment of many things, rethinking of many our fundamental beliefs. We should understand what the state should do, what is inside its exclusive competence, what business sector should do, because jobs are created not by the state, they are created by business entities. The third thing, what government and business sector can do together, how they can unite their resources, how governmental sector can delegate some functions to business sector. These efforts, they are mostly invisible, but they took many resources. So decentralization process delegate many powers to local level where amalgamated communities get these powers, and they should develop business sector and the corruption on the central level. It should be prevented from going locally. It is very important. I'd like to add about migration. I think this is not bad. You just imagine they earn money abroad and they send this money to Ukraine. For Ukraine, this is a big inflow of capital. On the other hand, this is not the threat for the business development. It is an opportunity for the business sector. If you take, for example, agribusiness, which I study directly, the performance is low there. If we take added value per hectare in Ukraine and in the USA, the difference is 3 times. Our agribusiness performance indicators are 3 times lower than those of USA. So the performance could be improved thanks to investment into machinery, into information services, and so on. Dear guests, do you have questions? You're welcome. Leonid Khomyakov, an economist and journalist. It was very interesting to hear to your answers. I have a general systematic comment. All our specialists, they are insiders. Do you think any reform or any project or agreement can be implemented when there is no clause in the text? What will be the responsibility for the failure? All positive parts of agreements are well articulated, but there are no punishments clearly set forth in the agreements. Who and how will be punished in case of failure? Do you know the principle of interdisciplinary research? The economy cannot work without taking consideration of other life spheres, for example, legal system, agri-sector. I have not seen this also. Another addition, the problems we discuss are important. I have a question. Why we do not see here students, masters of those schools which you had? This is your responsibility to teach youth. UCMC invited the experts to the expert discussions. That is why we do not have students here among the audience. The issue is fundamental. Talking about the students, we deliver lectures on the issues which we discuss today here. We are experts. We are teachers by profession, and yes, we say not what is in the books. And we also represent think tanks, and every think tank is not a highly academic institution. We lack academic institutions of high standard in Ukraine. The questions which we discussed today are interesting for the whole of Ukraine. International agreements, international treaties such as agreement of association, they have clauses, and even when there are no punishments set forth in it, anyway Ukraine will suffer if we do not implement our requirements set to us. And in other agreements, if we do not meet the requirements concerning terrorism and corruption, then the window of opportunities for Ukraine will be closed. As concerns the first question, here we are back to our general matters. As for me, responsibility should be at the technical level. To this end, we need to continue reforms and to change governance, how civil servants are employed, how they are recruited. This is political responsibility as well. If you have not made your promises come true, then you will not be elected for the next term. And also moral and ethical principles, they are also working efficient instrument. Today we are discussing the things which we have been discussing for many years, but I would like to talk about other aspects such as international trade, what kind of international trading policy we should have, because the environment has changed, how in the conditions of globalization we can meet the challenges, how material production is developed these years. But I think these talks are ahead, because anyway we should discuss this. Today, if I am punished, for example, for missing my fitness training, whether it would influence my visits, I think internal punishment could be more efficient than external. If you cannot make yourself visit your fitness training, you will not become an athlete. The other comment, when you often come to air discussions, the IMF said to us to do this or that. This is what I usually hear. This is needed not for the IMF. This is needed for us because we want our economy to develop. We always appeal to external motivation, to some punishments from the IMF or the European Union. I prefer other formulations, what we should do so the situation becomes better. We are doing this not because of the IMF and the EU, but because we need this for our economic growth. Responsibility for technological things such as implementation of association agreement, it requires legislative steps or meeting the IMF requirements. Every year, for example, we thought whether to continue or not to continue the moratorium, and when every law was adopted to continue the moratorium, it says that this moratorium will be prolonged for 1 year, but next year before May 1st the new draft law should be in place, but every year no draft law is prepared and no punishment follows. Why there is no responsibility? Of course, political responsibility then works, but I think this is a problem of compliance, legal compliance in Ukraine. I think in this case the president could add some life, contribute some life into the legal system operation. I have a question. Always in the time of changes, people want to know what will be with the dollar to hryvnia exchange rate. The question is not what will be with dollar. The problem may be with hryvnia. Well, in fact, everything depends on whether the future president, the new president, will continue cooperation with the IMF and other our donors. If we need to pay our debts, to repay our debts, we can borrow from our citizens and to finance our external debts anyway. We cannot do without these borrowings from international institutions. Anyway, new president will be forced to continue cooperation with the IMF and other donors. And in this case, I think there will be no major fluctuations of the exchange rate, but I will not risk to predict the exchange rate situation. One of the presidential candidates has not been politician before. What is the exchange rate of any currency? This means how much dollars we want to buy for our businesses to operate. So all fluctuations, they are politically motivated. And there are some trends as well. If investments come to Ukraine, if support comes to Ukraine, then the exchange rate will remain stable. And we studied the long-term recent period of stable exchange rate, and much depend on how we will repay our external debts. What will be the scenario? There are many scenarios and versions of program of debt repayment, external debt repayment. The last thing I'd like to say, besides fundamental economic things, much depends on politics. So I want all new, old presidents to maintain real independence of the national bank. If the president decides to control the national bank and not to let it be independent, then the problems with exchange rate will be seen. I believe into our national bank despite of all the things happening around it. I think the team in the National Bank is very professional. I think that they have made the National Bank not ideal but very strong institution despite of all the scandals around it. I'd like to mention my agribusiness sector again, that the exports of agricultural products is quite large, more than 40% in the total exports. So what is happening to exports is quite important for the exchange rate of dollar to hryvnia to Ukraine. So in the recent 5 years, everything was good. We had good harvest and good exports of agricultural products. What will be where the exchange rate will also depend on the agricultural harvest this year and next year, and we cannot know this information. If structural reforms, land reform in particular, will be continued, this would give impetus to Ukraine for investors to invest in Ukraine. The large share is the accent on structural reform is a large share of investment decisions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this fruitful discussion. Such discussions are very important to my mind in the situations when there are many proposals and counter proposals, because we tend to lose the subject in these discussions. Thank you.